That's a Shem. Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Let's do it. We're up to Shevuos Daf Vav Medalef, but somebody made my morning. This morning, I received a message from someone thousands of miles away with a photo. He's learning the Daf. He says, no better way, all the way in Eretz Yisrael, Hamat B'Shemesh. No better way to start my day. Thanks for changing my whole day.
Yeah, and we just
Unbelievable.
It's not Masigvul, right?
It's not Masigvul. Okay, very exciting. He hasn't bought a Gemara, so he's using his laptop. Never learned Shevuos in my life before, neither did I. But we have Gemaras. So if you ever come here, Dr. Gross sponsored a bunch of Gemaras for anybody who comes live to this year.
Not like Shavuot.
No, it's Shevuos.
It's not the Shavuot.
No, Shavuot, we say by Ashkenazim it's the same.
But the funny part is 49 is a blood. So.
Right, like 49 days of Sukkot.
Right, it can be confused with, and some people, I think
they learn from the
they learn Shevuos. Mush bava imid Marcina, I said they learn Shevuos between Pesach and Shevuos. Isn't interesting? Yeah, but you're right, it's Shavuot.
No, Shavuot.
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 In Hebrew, it's spelled the same way.
Okay.
Swear.
Getting a lesson here.
Not like Shavuot.
Shavuot meaning weeks.
Weeks.
Shavuot.
Yeah, and as opposed to oaths.
Shavuot.
It's the Shavuos.
Shavuot is swearing.
So what's there? Shavuot is weeks and Shavuot is swearing.
It's
Okay.
spelled the same letters.
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Same letter, but different
Pronunciation. So here we pronounce the same. Shavuos and Shavuos. That's that's the same. Yeah, we're very loose. That's why you have a better Messiah. Your Messiah is more reliable. Okay, just a quick.
Okay.
Anyway, so we have just a quick recap. Yesterday we started the Sugya of Negoim. So I just want to show you over here two charts. One is our Mishnah and one is Rabbi Akiva. Just to recap before we go into the next Gemara, which is a continuation. Let's take a look at the Mishnah first. The Mishnah said that Shnaim Shen Arba, right? The 1 and the 2 over here you see is the Av. The Beheris is the snow. It's white as snow. That's 1 Av. The Beheris has a Tolda, which is Sid. The Sid is the third shade of white from the top of the chain, from the top of the Nega chain. So you have the Sid is the third shade of white. The Se'es is the other Av, which is a shade less than Beheris, but it's also in the category of Av. And its Tolda is the Krum Beitza, is the egg membrane, which is the lowest shade of white. This is how the Mishnah splits it up. It's Beheris and Se'es that are Shnayim. She'en Arba, each Av, Beheris has Sid, and Se'es has Chum. Now, Rabbi Akiva, by the way, before we get to Rabbi Akiva, if you want to be mitzaref, a gris, right? The size of a nega is a gris. So if you want to be mitzaref 2 shades of white, which one can you be mitzaref? You can't be mitzaref beheris with krum, because krum is the tolda of se'es. It's not a tolda. So if you want to be mitzaref 2 shades of white, the only way, according to the Mishnah, you can be mitzaref 2 shades of white to total a gris for the kohen to be matame would be if you have a av and a tolda. An av and a tolda which eats tolda. Right? So even though the sid is the third shade of white, doesn't matter. It would be mitzvah for the beheras because this is its av and a tolda. Now Rabbi Akiva comes along, right? The Gemara is like trying to figure out where do we find this Rabbi Akiva. Let's take a look at the next chart. Akiva says zula ma'ila mizu. If you want to be mitzaref a gris, 2 shades of white, you need 2 shades that are next to each other, right? If you have, let's say, a shade of krum, the only way you can be mitzaref, the only way you can be mitzaref is a sid because that's right above it. That's a shade more of an intense white. And then with sid, can be mitzaref with se'es. Se'es can not be mitzaref with beheres because I believe that for sure not, but for sure krum to sid to se'es, zula ma'ila mazu, mitzaref, and that's how it works. Gemara wants to know, Gemara says you can't have Rabbi Akiva, this statement, be true, you can't reconcile that with the Mishnah. It's either or. You can't have both. You can't have both true at the same time. You know why? Because according to this, Krum would be mitzaref with Sid, and Sid would be mitzaref with Se'es. According to the Mishnah, Sid cannot be mitzaref with Se'es because Sid is a tolda of Beheres. So if it's Zula Ma'ila Mazu, Sid can be mitzaref with Se'es, And according to the Mishnah, it wouldn't be able to mistaref say. So anyway, so it's two separate shitas and how you organize the negoim. How do you organize the negoim? Two categories, Avana Tolda or Zula Maila Mizu. If it's one shade more intense than the other, then Afkamina is how much or which way you can be mitzaref. Says the Gemara, Veheches Shamina Rebbe Akiva, Vava Medalef. Veheches Shamina, welcome back, Kavaldik. Now you have a chazaka. Now it's a neder l'dvar mitzvah. Do not say b'li neder, so this way you show up every night. Now it's you have to. Okay, Zuk the Heilige Gemara. We're mamish starting right now. Vava Medalef. Veheches Shamina Rebbe Akiva, Zula Maila Mizu. Where do we find Rebbe Akiva said that negoim are combined in the way they're organized Zula Maila Mizu? Ilay Mamohadatanya. Omar Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi says, Shoal Yoshua benois shel Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva. Yoshua, the son of Rabbi Akiva, asked from his father Rabbi Akiva. By the way, just a quick commercial break. Rabbi Akiva had a son Yoshua. That's what we're learning here today in the Daf. Yeshua was the son of Rabbi Akiva. So Rashi here points out, this is Rashi's Shita in a few places in Shas, that this was Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Who Yeshua ben Karcha? You see Rashi? Rabbi Akiva kireachoya. Rabbi Akiva was bald, and the Gemara B'chayros calls Rabbi Akiva chutz min akireach is azeh. So this Rabbi Yeshua, we prove Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha is Rabbi Akiva's son, and he was called kireach. Lamaisa Tosfos and B'chayros does not like this pshat. He says, what, the Chachamim called Rabbi Akiva Baldi? Like, that's how you refer to Rabbi Akiva. You know, by Elisha, they called him Ola Kireach, and the bears came out, and they killed him. There's no, you don't refer to him as a Kireach, that's not... So you have a raya from a Gemara Chagiga to Rashi. That, a Baskol. Very interesting. I'm not familiar with that Gemara. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that Gemara. But leave it to Reb Shol to bring a raya from Shas to Rashi. Very beautiful. I don't know. Yeah? Zichru, which daf on...
Yeah? I think it's
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful.
We have to check.
Tosfos has another raya why Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha cannot be the son of Rabbi Akiva. Tosfos daf nun ches in Bechayra says because Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was born the day Rabbi Akiva died. And we know the Gemara Megillah says that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, "B'meh harachta yamim? How did you live so long?" And he wanted the bracha of Arichas Yamim, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha blessed Rebbe, should be zoichet to come to at least half of my age. You should live at least as long as I've lived for half of my life. That's what he blessed him with. Tosfos says, if Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha was the son of Rabbi Akiva, he makes a cheshbon, it's not much of a bracha. Because Rabbi Akiva died the day Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was born. So if you had a son, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, he lived 120 years.
Yes.
Tosfos says, right, the Gemara says that 4 people lived 120 years, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi Akiva, and no, the other 4 Tanoim, yeah, I believe Hillel lived 120 years as well. Maybe is it Shemuel? I don't remember. But either way, Tosfos over there says it wouldn't have been much of a bracha, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha can't be, it's impossible, based on that calculation that Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha is Rabbi Akiva's son. So we have Machlokes, Rashi and Tosfos exactly who Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha was. But either way, our Gemara is clear. Yeshua b'noi shel Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had a son Yeshua. Whether it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha or not, Rashi says yes, Tosfos says no. Either way, what did he say? Mipnei ma omru maras negoim shnayim shen arba. Pull up the Mishnah's chart. Why, when the Mishnah enumerates the 4 shades of white, it enumerates it in shnayim, which are alvos, shehin arba, which are toldos. Why does the Mishnah enumerate it that way, right? Says the Gemara, Omar Loi, so Rabbi Yeshua asks this to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, V'emlav ma yomru, what else should they say? So he said, Yomru, mikrum beitzo l'mayla tomei. Pull up the second chart, here we go. They should have said, mikrum beitzo l'mayla tomei. All they should have said was, if you want to tell me what past what white is tamei, just tell me anything that's whiter than a krum beitza included, is tamei. Now, Rashi over here says, What's the problem with saying Shnayim Shenarba versus Mikrum Beitza Lamayla Tomei? Why is it better to say Mikrum Beitza Lamayla? Rashi says, because we know, Gemara Pesachim Daf Gimel says, La'olam Yishana Odom Talmid Derech Tzara. This is a much more concise, sharp way of saying it. V'loma is Girish Moisan. Why do I have to remember all these complicated names? Se'ez, Beheres, Sapachas of Sid, Sapachas of Kumbeitza. Just tell me, this is the least shade of white, and anything above is Tamei. That would be a much more efficient way of saying it. So the Gemara says, Omar loy, Rabbi Akiva said to him, Loymar shemitztarfim zem zem. The reason why they organize it with the names is to teach you that can be mitztarif with each other. One shade can be mitztarif for the next. Omar loy, so if you want to tell me the din of tziruf, so add the words of mitztarfim zem zem. You don't have to tell me all the names and categorize it in certain ways with the opposite. Just tell me. It's mitztarif. So krum beitza lamayla, tomim mitztarfim zem zem. That's all you got to say. Omar loy said, no, that wouldn't be enough. I have to tell you the names of the negoim. We have to teach you the names of the negoim. Loy merlach, kol koyen, she'enoi baki behene b'shmeseyem, eina royas negoim. Any koyen that's not efficient, that's not proficient in a baki or fluent in the names of the negoim is not allowed to see negoim. That's amazing, right? Nathan, how are you? Let's go. You came in just to this right halacha. The halacha is that a kohen who doesn't know the names of the negoim, the different names, the different shades of white and what they're called, and which one is whiter than the other, is not allowed to diagnose a nega. Why does that make sense to you? Rabbi Akiva says that's why the Mishnah has to go through the trouble. We have to go through the trouble. The Chachamim had to enumerate and name every single nega. Kahanim have to be proficient in the names of the negoim, otherwise they cannot see patients. All right? Oh, so it's not enough. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Shua's son asked him, just tell me Krum Beitza Lamayla Tomei. So Rabbi Akiva says, no, it's not enough. A kohen has to be proficient in the names of the negoim. Before he diagnoses a nega, he's got to know all the names. He's got to study the Hilchas Negoim. And Taisus brings over here that if he doesn't know it, he's got to have at least a Yisrael Chacham standing over him, kind of letting him know which shade of white it is, what's it called, before he could say Tomei. He's got to know his stuff. By the way, why does he have to know his stuff? So I saw from the Achronim, they say, because every shade of white symbolizes another type of illness, spiritual illness you have. So the kohen is not just Tomei. The kohen is going to be your moira derech and how to do tshuva. So like if you go to a doctor, right, he doesn't know exactly, how to diagnose the symptoms and what illness you have. He cannot just give you like anybody. He might give you the wrong medication. Here we have a doctor sitting right here, Dr. Gross. Yeah, you gotta be able to know exactly what it is. The kohen is a spiritual doctor. So if he's just gonna know Mikrum Beitza Lamayla Tomei, that's not enough. So Amela, let's get a Gemara for a Bavi. Yeah, that pass him. Is that a Shevuos? Oh, so that's why Kol Koyin She'einu Boki Ben B'Shmasem Ein Royis Hanegoyim. Says the Gemara. Pull up the Mishnah's chart again. Pull up the Mishnah's chart. The Mishnah's chart asks the Gemara, V'ilu misid heichel olamayla loika omar. Take a look at Rabbi Akiva's question. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yeshua's question. Rabbi Yeshua's question to his father is, why don't you say Mikrum Beitza Ulamayla Tamei? He doesn't ask him say Mikrum Beitza Ulamayla and Misid Ulamayla. From the fact that he doesn't articulate his question by saying categorize it into two and say Mikrum Beitza Ulamayla and Misid Ulamayla is mashma. And what does he say? Instead he asks, go to the next one, the Brisa Rabbi Akiva, he asks, say Mikrum Beitza Ulamayla is mashma, that each one over here can be mitzvah for the next. Otherwise, you should have said Mesir L'mayla and Mikrum Beitza L'mayla if he held like the Mishnah. From the fact that he didn't mention Mesir L'mayla adjacent to Mikrum Beitza L'mayla, because each one can only connect with their Av, must be that he doesn't hold of the Mishnah. That's the Gemara's Raya. So the Gemara says, that's why he doesn't hold of the Mishnah Yol Zula Mailam Zumet Starfin. Asks the Gemara, V'dilma se'eis v'toldasa be'herz v'toldasa. You're right. He didn't say it b'peh mole. He didn't say it with a full mouth. He said, say mikrum beitza l'mayla, and etc., 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 yeah? You have mesuda l'mayla also. That's the kasha. The Gemara says, Gemara's not such a raya. Elo medri Rabbi Chanina. So Gemara says, where is the raya? There Rabbi Akiva holds by Negoim, it's zu l'mayla mizu. Where do you see that? If you're going to tell me you see it from his son's question to him, because his son articulated the question, say mikrum beitza l'mayla tamei, which means it's zu l'mayla mizu. Maybe his son wasn't medactic in the way he expressed his question. It could be he meant etc., which is also mesida l'mayla. So here the Gemara has another raya maybe. Elam b'chanina, Amar b'chanina. Mashal de Rabbi Akiva lama doiver daima. It's very interesting. We're about to embark on the rest of the Amud and the Daf really on Mishalim. The Gemara is going to bring Mishalim to Negoim, to the different stages and the different types of Negoim. Here, Rabbi Chanina says the Rabbi Akiva's opinion is similar to Arba Kaisa Shel Chalav. I actually wanted to bring in milk over here today. I forgot. 4 cups of milk. Yeah, and I had prepared in my house. I prepared the food coloring. Yeah, you had echad naflu latoicha shtei tipin shel dam. In 1 cup you have 2 drops of dam. The echad naflu latoicha arba tipin shel dam. The other one has 4. The echad naflu latoicha shmoina 8. The echad naflu latoicha shtei mesrei ve'omle shesh asrei. Shekulas marun loivanen. Each one, if you look at the cup, you're not going to say it's red. It's white. It's still white. Hello, so one is whiter than the next, depending on how many drops of blood you put into the cup. So over here also, by Negoim, if you take a look at the shades of white, they're all white. Question is, which one is whiter? So you say Zula Maila Mizu. So what do you see from this? Mashal Rabbi Chanina gives to explain Rabbi Akiva's opinion. You see from here that Rabbi Akiva is going with the logic of Zula Maila Mizu. That's his lashon, Zula Maila Mizu. Not like the Mishnah, where the Mishnah separates it in 2 categories. So maybe here's the source from where we know Rabbi Akiva is not like our Mishnah, because Rabbi Chanina's mashal is expressed in a way of Zula Maila Mizu. That is what the Gemara wants to suggest now. Says the Gemara, no, not a raya. Why? Because Eimer de Shamas le Rabbi Akiva befasach. Maybe Rabbi Chanina is talking about a certain type of nega, which is called Adam Domes. It's called a fasach. Fasach is basically a combination of 2 different colors, but it's whiter, it's more white than the other color. So in that case where you have fasach, that kind of a nega where it has 2 colors combined, but it's whiter than not, there Rabbi Akiva says the Negoim are mitztaref to a gris based on the intensity of white. Zula Maila Mizu. Maybe in that category of Negoim, he argues that it's Zula Maila Mizu. But how do you know? How do you know that when we're talking about strictly white, right? We're talking about white like Sida Heichel or Tzemer Lovan, that kind of white. How do you know that he combines it based on the order of progression of Zula Maila Mizu? That's his shayla. So you don't have a raya to choluk. Maybe you'll tell me that why should there be a difference? Once you see Rabbi Akiva says that you can combine it based on the intensity of white, Zula Maila Mizu by fasach, by that type of nega, so too I'll hold by regular white based on the shades of white, Zula Maila Mizu. Asks the Gemara, the truth is, I'll challenge Reb Chanina, b'fasach gufei mishametlei. Is it really so simple that Rabbi Akiva holds by fasach that you go zel l'mayla mizeh? V'tani Rabbi Akiva oimer adam dem shebezeh v'shebezeh ki yayin ha'mazik b'mayim elo shal beheres azak hasheleg v'shal sid deyai meno. The way Rabbi Akiva, pull up the Mishnah's chart again, the way Rabbi Akiva expresses his opinion in the Mishnah of Negoim when it comes to fasach, take a look. He says beheres is azak hasheleg, is as white as snow, it's snow white. And Shalsid deyahemena, and Shalsid is slightly less white. So why is he putting Sid after Beheres? If he goes in the order of progression, what should he put after Beheres? Se'es. Se'es is a shade slightly whiter than Beheres. Vim Isa shel tzemer deyahemena mebayalei. If you're going to put it, if you hold your Akiva holds that you go in the order of progression, then what's number 2 on the white list? Right? I just came from Tag, so I asked him to whitelist a certain website that I needed for my son. So what's on the white list? So you have Se'es is should be Tzemer. So you see from there, Rabbi Akiva, even by Fasach, the way he organizes and lumps it together, it seems like he does hold the Mishnah, he doesn't hold the Svar Zelam Eilam Hazeh. Says Gemara Amri, Enechanami. Truth is, you're right. V'atanya, Reb Nosson Eimer, Lo Sham Rabbi Akiva Shal Sidei Ameno, Shal Tzemer Dei Ameno. You're right, there's another Girsa, and you have to be Geiris based on the Brise's Girsa. The truth is, Rabbi Akiva put Tzemer right after Beheres, right after snow. So Lamaisa, what do you see from here? You see that Rabbi Akiva argues on the Mishnah. Now we already said yesterday, right? Rabbi Akiva was a master in the garment alis, and we said that many times in Shas, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Akiva, they have a conversation in Agada, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah tells Rabbi Akiva, "Malacha Rabbi Akiva it's lagada klach it's the garment alis. Go to the garment alis." I saw that some achronim say, why did they speak to Rabbi Akiva like that? Why did they send him to the garment alis every time he approached Agada? So I saw a lot of the achronim. I don't remember a specific achron right now; it's not coming to mind. But they say that how many people can darshan Agadata? What's easier to darshan, Agadata or to give a shiur in the garment alis? Agadata is much easier. Nathan says the garment alis is easier. Okay, depends. If you're Breslev, the story every Maisa has so many secrets and so many soidas. Yeah, mamish, it's so deep. Yeah, vada. I just found out. Actually, I was eating by Reb Shol this Shabbos, and he told me he had Rabbi Adas over there. It was a Moiradiga Suda together, and he said that there are 4 areas in Torah: Pardes, Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soid, and he said that Sfaradim, they put Soid above all else. That's why Sfarad is Oisius Soid first, Pshat, Remez, Drush. They put the Soid first. So that's the Pshat. The Arizal says, I think he quoted the Arizal. Who did he quote? Al Tia Kesus Kepered Ein Hoven. So the Pasuk at the Tehillim. So it says, Sus, don't be like the guy who's Soid v'Soid. Sus stands for Soid v'Soid. He's only in Kabbalah. He's only, you have to know Pshat Remez Drush. But either way, the Achronim say, Rabbi Akiva was the only one really who had such a grasp in Seder Taharis in the Goyim and Alis that every time he approached Agadata, they told him, listen, all of us can darshan Agadata. We can all do Agadata, but so few can learn the Goyim and Alis. So let you stick to the Goyim and Alis, because there aren't that many people who can do what you do. You got to stick to the area you're gifted in. And all of us will do Agadata. That's what Elazar ben Azariah meant to tell him. But either way, here we see that our Mishnah cannot be reconciled with Rabbi Akiva, because we finally found this Rabbi Akiva who organizes Negoim differently, the 4 shades of white very differently, and Memela, the Tzirufim, when you want to be Mitzaref, combine it to a gris, you'll be Mitzaref, the different shades of white, very differently than the Mishnah, because the Mishnah it's only Avana Tolda, even though the Tolda is 2 shades lower. And according to Rabbi Akiva, it's a different organization, different order, and Memela, different combinations. That's the Nafkamina Lahalacha. By the way, the doctor just came in today and he brought in this paper and it says shades of white, right? And look how many shades of white the doctor was able to print out. I think that there's fasach in here also, damdomes. I see a little combination of colors. But there are shades of white, and actually Tosfos in our sugya says that, what do you mean? There are only 4 shades of white? The Mishnah and Rabbi Akiva are only dealing with Beheres Se'es, and then you have, Shida Heichel, the lime plaster, and you have Krum Beitza, the egg membrane. So Tosfos says, you know how many shades of white? There are at least, I think it brings down here, Ayin Beis. Ayin Beis Maros. There are at least 72 shades of white, at least according to Tosfos. So what do you mean? So Tosfos says, actually, the other shades of white are not Negoim. Negoim only come in 4 shades. What are the 4 shades that Negoim come in? Negoim come in the shades of Baheres, Sheleg. Yeah, that's it. And you have a Mesorah. What those shades of white are. It's Mesorah. It's all Mesorah based. It's not medical. It's none of that. It's Mesorah based. Ishmet pi ish Allah chamesh b'Sinai. What are these 4 shades of white? And only these 4 shades of white are Matama v'Negoim. There are no other whites in between that are Matama v'Negoim. So even though you go to a paint store, or you go to Blick, and you take a look at how many shades of white there are, it doesn't matter. It's only these 4 shades. If you could pull up the Sefarno very quickly.
Why are there so many shades? Like eggshells are so varied. And
Right, so which eggshell are we talking about even, right? That's what you're asking. Like even within the eggshell world, the egg membrane. Yeah.
No, there's no action. It's
The membrane, the membrane.
The
Yeah.
membrane-
I don't know if they're...
all the members is also
Right, so Lamashal, the Gemara is going to ask in a moment what kind of wool, right? White wool, tzemer, se'esis tzemer. What kind of white wool is nega, is the nega? The Gemara says, tzemer lovan ben yoimoy, that was never touched, like it's protected. The Gemara will tell you, we're getting there in a few lines. So it's very, very specific kind of tzemer, a very specific kind of egg membrane, but we don't exactly know what it is. But here is a tremendous safarno on the parsha of last week. He says, you should know, shar mine atzeras, you sometimes see people like they have white patches on their skin, right? And stamazah, we have to know if negoim apply nowadays. We'll talk about it in a moment. But here the safarno says, shar mine atzeras chazokim, right? There are other mine atzeras, shesipru, that people talk about, shem sartan lechol aguf bechlal. It mamish, it makes your whole body sick, right? You have certain symptoms, white patches of the skin that come.
I mean like cancer. Yeah.
Sometimes it can mean cancer. Sometimes it leans to a reddish hue color or a black. It's only these four. And then he says, anybody has these four shades, it's a kapara. Sometimes doctors, right? They have conventions and meetings and all these kinds of gatherings that talk about tzaras, other kinds of tzaras. That has nothing to do with the parsha of Negoim. That either comes because we're makalkel, it's madve mitzrayim eroim, or because a person doesn't have a proper and healthy diet. He says it's vanhogas ha'meichel va'mishta that sometimes can lead to certain rough patches on your skin that are symptoms from an unhealthy diet. But what we're talking about over here is a spiritual ailment. It doesn't hurt your body. It's not a physical ailment. It doesn't scratch. It does nothing to do with your
What about the
physiology.
Today, psoriasis.
Oh, so psoriasis would not be included. B'chalal not. Even if you found me.
The same word.
Yeah. Tzaras is a general word. It's interesting. I never thought about that.
Psoriasis is tzara.
You ever thought about the word? Psoriasis is tzaras?
Yeah.
It's an English
They used to
woman.
call
Yeah,
that
but
when
they
you
call it
get
tzara,
pregnant.
psoriasis.
Yafeh. I never knew this. Wow.
Psoriasis? Okay.
They
פשוט, מה זה? פשוט שזה psoriasis is tzara.
Not the tzaras that we're talking about.
But look at it. The people that
It's not
have
matama.
psoriasis, look at psoriasis. They have the ktarim levanim. That's white stains. Like white.
No, sure. You have tamim lavanim, but it's only these four shades. I just want to end off with, before we go weiter, I want to end off. Is tzaras relevant today? Is there tzaras? Is there negoim? If somebody has taka, you can match his shade of white to, let's say, tzemer lovan ben yomer, like the Gemara is going to describe. Is that called a tzaras? They have to go to a kohen, and the kohen can be metame. I mean, you can't make a carbon. You'll stay mitzvah forever. God forbid. So, what is there such a concept today? Now the emes is the Sifra says, Odom kisiya ba'or b'sar. Tia means even b'zman hazeh. That tzaras applies to zman hazeh. Obviously, we don't have a mesoyer and how to diagnose what tzaras is exactly. Like Rav Shol is saying, psoriasis maybe is tzaras. We don't know if that falls under the category of one of those shades of white that we're talking about. But the Rambam, in the end of Hilchas Tumas Tzaras, the Rambam writes that nigei batim and nigei begodim, he says, Hoya kepele v'ois b'Yisrael. It was a miracle. Yeah, if you have an ailment, a person has an ailment in his body, that we understand, right? But that your beged suddenly has an ailment, like suddenly all of a sudden it's tzaras, that's a miracle. And we saw in Sanhedrin Gemara 9 Aleph. The Gemara says that a nigei batim never happened. One of the three areas in Torah, right? Irani dachas,
Only one.
mamzer, right? Ben Sarah Moira, and
Nigga batim only one time happened. Nigga batim.
so there is an opinion of that
When
Gemara.
they got into the Eretz Yisrael, this is the only time nigga batim happened.
Okay, so the question is, there is an opinion that it happened, but there's one opinion that says droish v'kabel schar. The only reason why we get that parsha, one of the three parshas, that droish v'kabel schar. But either way, the Rambam says, they're medaik in the Rambam in the end of Hilchas Tumas Tzaras. The Rambam only says nigei begodim and nigei batim, but he doesn't say nigei tzaras on the oir, on the skin. And in fact, early on Tumas Tzaras, when the Rambam talks about the skin, he says it's noyeg bein b'fnei habayis, bein sheloi b'fnei habayis, which sounds like even b'zman hazeh, you could actually have, somebody could be walking around and says, he might not know it, he might call it some other name, but certainly there is such a, and by the way, as long as he doesn't go to a kohen, the kohen says, tome, right? If he goes to a kohen who has a messiah about it, then he doesn't actually, contract, he doesn't become officially. He has to go to the kohen to be labeled and to be diagnosed properly. But either way, certainly the idea is still applicable today. Says the Gemara weiter. Here we are. A menolon de beheres azehi. How do we know that the beheres is the strongest white? It's the whitest white. Omer Abayim Akrov in beheres levana hi. He levana ve'ein acheres levana. It's an extra word in the Torah. This is white, and nothing above beheres is whiter than beheres. Beheres is as white gets. Ton Rabbanan. Beheres amuka. Beheres appears to be deeper than the skin. The appearance of a beheres, of a nega, seems to be deeper than the skin. Just like if you look at a shadow, right, then the part of the sun where the sun shines appears to be deeper than the shadow. Usually the darker spots seem elevated. Se'es. What about se'es? It's a shade that's not as white, right? It's a shade darker. And that's why it's called se'es. Because it appears dark, it appears above.
באיזה אור אתה מסתכל על הצרעת? In the sun or you can do it in a candle? איזה אור אתה מסתכל על הצרעת?
I don't know. What do you say? I'm sure that this is brought down la halacha. You have to probably, there was no electricity in the olden
Candle,
days.
you look at the candle or
The
you
Ornel?
look at the sun?
Aha.
Look at
In
it.
the sun.
Aha. Yeah, I don't know. It could be from here. Maybe we know. Kamar chama amukim menatzel. Seis ein seis el gavoy v'chein mal kol harim mal kol gavoyes v'nesoyes. Sapachas ein sapachas el tfeila v'chein oimer v'omer v'chein. Sapachas means it's a tuffle, right? So that's the tolda of seis. Ashkan tfeila seis. We see there's a tuffle, there's a tolda for seis. Why only seis? Because seis is mentioned. Sapachas is mentioned immediately after seis. It says seis oy sapachas. Or vela se'ez, vela sapachas. So sapachas is a tolda of se'ez. Tfeila lebeheres minon. How do we know beheres also has a tolda? Amr Abzeir nemer levana baseis nemer levana beheres. Mal levana mura baseis yesh la tfeila. Af levana mura beheres yesh la tfeila. Just like se'ez has a tuffle, gzeir shava levana to beheres also has a tuffle. Ma'asiz atana heitel akasiv lasapachas ben se'ez la beheres. The Torah puts sapachas in between se'ez and beheres. Loimer lecha to darshan kashem shetfeila la se'ez kach tfeila beheres that we have a tolda for beheres as well. That's why se'ez comes in between. Sapachas comes in between se'ez and beheres. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to know se'ez katzemer lovan, my tzemer lovan. What kind of tzemer lovan? You were asking what kind of eggshell, right? Here the Gemara asks with regard to tzemer lovan. Amar Viva Rasa tzemer naki ben yaimim shemechabnen boy lamelis. Or hashemesh. Okay, so the goyim have to be seen by the kohen, by the or hashemesh, not by the or haner. Shekoyach. So eis ketzemer loven, my tzemer loven. Amar Rabbi ben Ravasa tzemer noki ben yoimei shemechabnen boy lemelas. You need tzemer noki ben yoimei from a sheep that was born on that same day. That's how clean and pristine of white you need, and that's shemechabnen boy lemelas, that you cover it over and protect it so it shouldn't get dirty. Amar B'chini Moshe huh? He said, "Moshel Rabbanon lamad davar daima l'trei malchi l'trei yeparchi." Here you got 2 kings and 2 viceroys. Yeah, malchi shel zeh lamayla mi malchi shel zeh v'yeparchi shel zeh lamayla mi yeparchi shel zeh. Yeah, 1 to 4. Let's see, what do we got? Like the equivalent of leaders in today's world. Top of the other. Let's see, what do we got?
Trump.
Here we go. Donald Trump, number 1. Who is this guy? Anybody know which president of which country this is? Brazil. Very good. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Lula. Is that? Oh, that's how you call him?
Yeah.
Lula. How would you know, Ravi?
He's a communist.
Not a fan of the Jews.
Okay.
He's not a good guy.
He's a communist.
Brazil. I don't know. Where is Brazil on the political landscape right now?
He's not a good guy.
Not a good guy. I know South America, but communist.
They rig the elections.
Very pro-Hamas. Yeah. Brazil's pro-Hamas.
Okay.
No, the deep state's installed this guy.
So then you have, if you put it in the order of Trei Malka, let's say 2 presidents, and 2 Mesholim, 2 vice presidents, who is this? Whose opinion is this order? This is Rabbi Akiva, Zulamayla Mezu. Says the Gemara, Hai Zulamayla Mezev, Zulamayla Mezev. That's Rabbi Akiva. You're trying to give me a mashal for the Chachamim. of Shnaim Shen Arbo, and you're giving me Rabbi Akiva. Zelamayla Mezeh. Says the Gemara, oh, you're right, let me change it. You have to change it to Shnaim Shen Arbo. He's talking about the order would be, even though, right, I'm sure the Brazilian president has more power than our vice president. Our vice president is third on the list of power. Huh?
Who's the foe?
That's the vice president.
That's the vice president of Brazil.
Ah, yeah.
So in other words, if you wanted to give a mashal to our Mishnah by Negoyim of Shnaim Shen Arbo, you'd have to give Shnaim Shen Arbo, the top two are Avos, the presidents, and below them are the vice presidents. This is the mashal according to the Rabbana. That's the way you'd have to say it. By the way, what's really interesting, you think we are, having fun over here because we're putting up current leaders, world leaders. Here you have Ravad Barabam Kegoin, Malka Va'al Kafta, Rafila V'Resh Gelusa. They're giving their own leaders as examples, yeah, in their time. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Again, you're giving the order according to Rabbi Kiva. Switch it out. Malka Rafila V'Al Kafta V'Resh Gelusa. Okay. Yeah, not the Resh Gelusa of Eretz Yisrael. Yeah.
It's Bible code that Rav Bibi, who's the Nasi of Israel, is on the same page.
Wow, Avi, that's amazing. I wanted to put Bibi with, but I don't think. First, I said to Rocky, I said put on Putin, right? Because Putin, is in the news every day, and Ukraine.
Russia abolished.
He says Russia. Putin doesn't have a vice president.
They abolished it in like 4 years.
I said, okay, let's put up Zelensky. So Zelensky doesn't have a vice president either. Eichnisht. Okay, so Trump called him a dictator. Okay, Sean, so you have that also. Then I wanted to put up. Then I said, let's put up the Argentinian president Javier Milei because he's almost a Jew. He might be a secret Jew already.
Yeah, you're going to convert after.
He's going to convert after, yeah. So he said that his vice president is a woman, so we can't put her up. All right, so either way, we figured, okay, Brazil was the fifth choice.
The Mexican president, she's a Jew.
No vice president.
The Mexican president is a Jew?
Woman.
It's a female, right? It's a lady.
Shinebaum.
Shinebaum? Wow. 1 second, hold on.
But we grew up with her in Brooklyn. Bibi, Zelensky, Shinebaum are the 3 leaders right now.
Wow, okay.
And Putin ate Cholent.
Okay, but here, Rava has a different analogy. He has his own kings he wants to give a mashal to, which is so interesting. We're talking about the Goyim, and the order of whiteness in each nega. We compare it to world leaders. I'm sure that there are many soidus over here. Soidus HaTorah, Reb Shol will have what to say on the Kabbalistic side of it. But Rava says, Kigoin, Shavur Malka v'Kesar. He says, the Persian king and the Italian, the Roman king. Okay. Who is more chashiv? Who's more important? Persia, the king of Persia, or the king of Rome? He said, what are you, like you're somewhere in the forest? You're not up to date with the current news?
Living under a rock.
You're living under a rock, is that an expression?
Yeah, living under a rock.
You're living under a rock in some forest? Go take a look, who has the dominating currency in the world. What's the dollar of the time, so to speak? I don't think the dollar is still the dominating currency today. Yeah, I don't carry any more cash on me. I don't know. It's all credit card. So, what is this? Yeah, cryptocurrency, very big now. Yeah.
Still the dollar though. Very little by one.
So he says, "Puk chazi tiva deman sagi be'alma dechsiv v'seichel kol ara uzdashina v'sadkina." So there's a pasuk over there by Daniel when it talks about the Roman Empire. It says that they'll consume the entire world, which means that all of their merchandise and their currency will overtake the world. Omer Rabbi Yochanan zu roimi chayeves shetiva yotza b'chal ha'olam kulay. It's referring to the Romans, who's definitely more important than Melech Paras, and therefore he would be on top. He would be the Beheres on top of the list if you had to organize it based on the shades of white and the shades of power, so to speak. The what?
The Roman, Christianity, the Christian kingdoms are still an extension of Rome.
Yeah.
So America is still more powerful than Iran. But those are the two heads that are coming to.
So America is an extension of the Roman Empire. Is like that's Golus Edom.
Yeah,
That's Golus Edom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Galuta.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you say red in Italian? You know? How do you say red in Italian?
I know.
Anybody know?
כמו סנק. המילה של סנק, נו? איזה מילה של סנק? איך קוראים לזה, נו?
I forget.
רוקו?
Can somebody look it up quickly? How do you say red in Italian?
משהו עוד...
Rosa.
Rosa.
Oh, what's the...
Rosa. Okay, now who'd you ask? ChatGPT?
Google.
Google? Go now. Ask Google. This is an amazing. What's the most common last name? What's in Italy? What's the most common Italian last name?
It's Rosa.
Rosa.
Rosa, yeah.
The most. It's Golus Edom or Golus Edom. Which, by the way, if I don't know if you're seeing the pictures of the cardinals, the conclave is starting. The whole election of a new
The
pope.
kippa is red.
The Alts is red. Yeah. I was like, is it coincidence that nowadays the most common name in Italy, last name in Italy is red? It's Golus
I
Edom.
know when they announce the ballots,
Yeah.
when they announce it.
Very interesting.
Red smoke? Some creepy stuff, man.
The smoke is black if they didn't elect. In other words, they couldn't come to an agreement, and it's white as soon as they elect. Yeah. But either way, we're definitely still in Golus Edom, and here we're talking about that Edom is certainly more powerful than Paras. What's really interesting is, if you take a look at the Rashash, if you take a look at the Matzchias, they seem to have had a Girsa in our Gemara that says that between the dialogue of Rav Papa and Rava, Haimenayu Adif, right, he answered him, he said, Paras. And they say, don't be Goyrus Paras, be Goyrus Rome, which is a pliatzuma. How could there be a Girsa of Paras if we're talking about the Nevu of Daniel, right? And Daniel saw in his vision, what did he see? He saw 4 chayas. Yeah? And the chaya, the chaya gdoila v'ayuma, the most scary chaya that Daniel saw in the vision, was corresponding to Malchus Revius, which is Rome. So why would he answer him, Paras, if the pasuk that he brings a raya from, there was a girsa or a tos? Why would he answer him that
They
way?
lived in Paras. They lived in Paras, and they were afraid that so they had to go as like the Paras is stronger than Rome.
Excellent. That's exactly what I heard from somebody in Oldaf. His name is Rav Pinchas Gross. I was listening to him, and he said that the Girsa is justified. The Rashash changes it back to Rome and Marzchias, but there was an old Girsa, an old version of the Gemara that said you have to be that had a Girsa of Paras, because if you take a look at Rashi, when Rashi talks about Haimenayu Adif, right, says that in Rav Papa, when he asked Rava which one is Adif, he was Makdim, Shvur Malka v'Kesar. Even Rava said, Kigoin Shvur Malka koidim, and then Kesar oini. Why was he Makdim Shvur Malka before Kesar? If Kesar is Rome, and Rome is stronger and more important, it's first on the list. So why is Rava saying Kigoin Shvur Malka, Persia, and then Rome, which is afterwards, if Rome is on top? And that's Rava told him afterwards. The answer is, says Rashi, V'Rava miyira osa. Because Gemara Chagiga says that Rava was subject, he was under the oppression of the Persian Empire of Shvur Malka. So even in his conversation, he had to mention Shvur Malka first. He was scared. So Mamela, in the old versions of the Gemaras, when they had this dialogue back and forth, he took him to a pasuk in Daniel to hint to him, take a look at the Mar over there, you'll know. But what do I have to say? Rabbi Yochanan zu paras chayeves, because when we speak barachal b'traktana, we speak clearly. We have to kind of mislead them because we're afraid of the Persians. So that is a interesting pshat in the girsa that once was in Talmud Bavli on this Gemara. Says the Gemara, Ravina says, Kegoin glima the amar v'shachkei. He has other mishalim, another mashal, ladas chachamim. How do you characterize, or how does he illustrate the white of Beheres? He says if you have a brand new glima of tzemer, you have a brand new beged, coat made out of wool, the shachke That's the Be'eres V'shachke, and then it gets
Worn out.
worn out.
After a few long
Worn out. It gets worn out.
After a few long days, it gets
Don't send your suit to the cleaners very often. It gets worn out. It gets shiny. You don't destroy it. Yeah, v'shachke. So the v'shachke, you take a brand new suit made of tzemer, right, and then it becomes worn out. That's the tolda. That's the sidda hechel. And then you have sadina de kisna, also from Pishtan, which is mushal to se'es, which is brand new. V'shachke gets worn out. That would be the tolda of se'es, a mushal for the tolda of se'es, which is krum beitza, which is an egg membrane. But either way, Hadran Aloch, the Sugi of an Agoyim for now, and Be'ez Hashem tomorrow, Hashem will go back to Tumas Mikdash Kedosh. I'm just going to end with one Maisa, because we know that Nigoyim come. Why do Nigoyim come on a person? Come because of Lashon Hara. So somebody called me with a Maisa, a very interesting story, and it dawned on me, Mamish, this is what the Chafetz Chaim says about Lashon Hara. Guy said he was parking his car in Lakewood, and when he got into the spot, he was trying to straighten his car, and he pulled into the he pulled onto the clutch to drive, and as he pressed instead of pressing on the brake to stop, he pressed on the gas by mistake, and boom, he banged into the car in front of him.
Nice.
Now, to his great dismay, the car in front of him, the driver was still in there. It was parked, but the driver was still in the car. And the driver comes running out, yelling, "What are you doing?" Another yid, "What are you doing?" He yells at him. He's like, "All right, I'm calling the cops." This guy, Nebuch, was a younger man, sitting and learning in BMG. He has no money. He says, "Look, do me a favor. Take your car to the mechanic. I'll cover the bill. I can't afford for my insurance to go up. If you file a claim, my insurance goes up." He says, "No, we're not going to do it that. We're not going to do the yeshivish way. We're going to do it the proper way." And he calls the cops. All right? Calls the cops. The police show up, and they take a look at the guy who called them. Right? The guy calls them, runs over to the cops, says, "This guy, look at my car." They take one look at the damage on the car, and they ticket the guy who called. They ticket the guy who called. He says, "What are you ticketing me for?" He says, "You're parked in a handicap spot." He says, "Do you have a permit?" "I don't see the permit hanging on the..." So Chafetz Chaim says that when a person speaks Lashon Hara, it's like he's calling the cops on another yid. But the way Shemayim works, the way Hashem works, as soon as you call the cops on another yid, as soon as you call the cops on another yid, you know where they look first? They go take a look at your car first. Let's see your file. Are you perfect or not? And that's why the Mepharshim say that when we came to the Yam Suf, right, there was a tremendous kitrug. Why all of a sudden there's a kitrug? You know why? Because they davened to Hashem to save them from the Mitzrayim. They called the cops on the Mitzrayim. So you call the cops to punish them. So they say, "1 second, we got to open your file. We got to see, are you perfect? Let's see. No, you're also halal oivdai v'dezara." That's the kitrug. Anytime, it doesn't matter on who. A guy calls the cops on another yid, physically or spiritually, beware, be careful, because they're going to open your file first. Okay, Chavis, I can